It's Domenico here. I'm with my friends from the Pacific Salmon Foundation, Mike Meneer and Eli Enns from the Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas. We're here at the Pacific Salmon Foundation's Victoria fundraising event. And I got to tell you, it's hard to believe that it's been a year since we've already gone through our first issuance of BigCoast Forest Climate Initiative carbon credits. And it would be really interesting if we could get an update on just how the revenue that we've been sharing with both of you has been put to use in the first year.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start since we're at the Salmon Foundation, Gala. It's great to be with you, Eli and Domenico. The relationship with Mosaic is 2 decades old now. Yes. And you've contributed more than $1.5 million to us in that history. And the Big Coast Initiative is now upping that contribution in a very significant way. And really how we're deploying these funds is really in 2 ways. We say at the Salmon Foundation, there are 2 doors to get at rebuilding and protecting wild salmon. Climate change, which is the major factor impacting salmon, and reconciliation.
Right.
We have to do everything that we can with Indigenous leadership to recover those salmon stocks that are struggling the most and to help the stocks that are doing well be resilient and adapt to climate in the future. So we're deploying the funds on Vancouver Island near your forestry lands in a way that supports projects that are immediately responding to climate emergencies. We've had historic droughts this last year. We're likely heading into another drought area. There are a number of nations that came to us in the last year with projects involving fish stranding, fish that were stuck without enough water, warm water. And so we supported them in a number of their initiatives to actually create cold water and to open up fish obstructions. And we did that not only on the island, but also around the Salish Sea, Indian River, for example, over on the mainland. And we'll continue to do that. But the other thing that we have to do is also, and this is why the IPCAs, I think, are so important, and Eli's work is so important, we have to also be thinking long-term and offering ourselves to the Indigenous nations and peoples as supporters, as allies, as partners. So we're working with a number of entities like the First Nations Fisheries Council. We just recently gave a grant to the Mamalukula IPCA to support the work long-term that they want to do to rebuild salmon populations. So again, your extra dollars that you give us that are unrestricted to get at these really important projects relative to climate and reconciliation and the ability to deploy those funds is something we're really good at, and you're giving us the flexibility to do more of that, quite frankly.
Thanks, Mike. And it's great to have you as the CEO of the Pacific Salmon Foundation doing all the great work you and your team have been doing for so many years now. Putting you together through the BigCoast Forest Climate Initiative with our friends at the Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas is a real big win, I think, for our customers, for our future customers, and for the coast at large. Eli, director of the IPCA West Coast Innovation Program, tell us a bit about how the revenue that's come in from the BigCoast Forest Climate Initiative has been put to use with your team.
Yeah, for sure. Great to hear about your work. It's the Canadian Indigenous Conservation Innovation Center Association.
Okay.
Not as simple as
PSF.
CICICA is what we call it.
Right.
And CICICA doesn't lead in the creation of IPCAs. What we do is we support First Nations, Métis, and Inuit governments who desire to create IPCAs,
right,
first and foremost. And so those funds help us to work on, within the lens of the Big Coast Carbon Initiative, to talk with nations, to inform them, first of all, what IPCAs are and what the opportunity is. Like, you gotta have that knowledge mobilization happening first and foremost, and then bringing in the science and saying, okay, well, if we're gonna create an IPCA here, these old growth areas, whether it's on a slope or whether it's on a plateau or wherever it is the thin edge of the wedge in terms of how we can restore governance and interconnected stewardship, so that we're thinking from old growth to estuary, thinking about marine habitat coming in terrestrial habitat. I think we all know commonsensically that it's all interconnected, but sometimes through policies of government and through just the realities of bureaucracy and whatnot, things get siloed, things get disconnected. So IPCAs is kind of like medicine for reestablishing that interconnectivity. So the salmon, the trees, we know it's all interconnected. And that the IPCA offers let's call it a social innovation. And the funding from Big Coast with the carbon sales has allowed us to bring together a team to start building that awareness and building that momentum so that we're looking 500 years in the future. We're not thinking one quarter down the road. We're thinking 500 years in the future. And so, what is that saying? A journey of 1,000. The biggest step of a journey of 1,000 steps is the first step.
Yeah.
So we're taking that first step.
Thanks, gentlemen. Let's
Yeah.
have a great
Thanks,
event tonight.
Domenico.
Thanks, everybody. Keep it up.
Eli.
BigCoastForest.com.
It's good.